to be with you. Yes, I wanted to share some thoughts. Let me see if I can just share my screen here. Hopefully you can all see this. So yes, I wanted to share some thoughts with you, a reflection on where we are now as a sector, a look at where we are heading and the imperative that exists around that, and to share with you also some thinking around how we might get there, including in respect of what Lawtech UK is doing, for which I am the lead. So starting at the beginning with purpose. So every single person that works in the legal sector, whatever profession or specialism, is actually deployed to a common purpose, although sometimes we may not particularly focus on that when we're targeting our business priorities. But actually the legal sector underpins society and the economy in respect of trade and business, the management of disputes, and the citizen aspect, and it is an essential and core fundamental for all of us. And it also makes a significant economic contribution. There are equivalents to these numbers in every market, but in the UK, the legal services sector contributes 60 billion in GVA to the economy last year, and it employs 400,000 people directly. These are pre-COVID figures, but nonetheless, the point is that it's material. The growth rate we can debate, and it doesn't in fact include the impact of tech, and nor does this number in respect of the size of the market. So $1 trillion industry that we're talking about here. Now, I was general counsel at a FinTech for many years, TransferWise, and the venture capital community were very excited about the size of the market that TransferWise was going after, $1 to $2 trillion. And they're excited about that because there's huge potential to disrupt that industry, and we can look at the legal sector through a similar lens. And of course, we are in the wave, riding the wave of the fourth industrial revolution. Huge advances in technology existing already and coming, and this fusion of types of technology that impact the digital, physical, and biological world. And we're on that wave whether we want to be on it or not. There is no place to jump off. And COVID's demonstrated, in fact, accelerated many of the trends for which we were already on a trajectory. And the estimate is a 5-year acceleration in terms of its impact. So we're on the wave and there is momentum. Now, of course, in the legal sector, there has been a lot of focus around video and cloud, but nonetheless, there has been progress in legal. And the wonderful thing about globalization and our digital world is that every jurisdiction has the potential to present a leadership position to the world. And there are many that are taking strides in this area. And the UK is an example of this. So as a small nation of nations, we have a strong bench strength in artificial intelligence, one of the top 3 in fintech, the best place in the world to start a fintech business. And the numbers in terms of investment in respect of, in particular, tech companies, but fintech at 4 billion last year. There's a cross-fertilization that we can bring into the legal sector and through Lawtech. And in the UK, the Lawtech sector is thriving, very, very active. We're up to 290 million of investment total. Obviously, when you compare that to the fintech sector just last year in the UK, we are still very much in the foothills, but nonetheless exciting progress and growth. And this really is to demonstrate the diversity. So those previous figures were about the startup and scale-up community, but the Lawtech sector, or legal tech as we're calling it here, is hugely diverse. There's a lot of activity, and you could probably do one of these for every city, every region, every country in the world. And what's interesting about it is it's quite diffuse, it's quite fragmented. There isn't a cohesive activity in respect of all of these different initiatives yet, and there's an opportunity here. And so what is in scope? Law tech or legal tech in the past was used to describe, or different terms were used depending on who was consuming or delivering those services. Increasingly, we're seeing law tech as a phrase, an umbrella term, simply to describe technology-driven disruption in law, whether that's in respect of the delivery of legal services, resolution of disputes, or helping people take care of their own legal matters. And the likelihood is that we will increasingly see a decline in the need for these definitions over time. And certainly who is delivering the service and whether they are targeting a particular market will become less relevant over time. It will simply become the digital law economy, the legal economy, the economy. So where are we in terms of state of play in respect of law tech and adoption? And the truth is that we really still are very nascent in respect of where we can go. So investment levels we're still seeing, even through COVID, in the single digits versus other markets and other sectors where we see double-digit investment in digitization and transformation as standard. The adoption levels still pretty low, still very much focused on the B2B market, with B2C as an opportunity still to come, and systems in many countries still needing an overhaul. And the type of innovation, we still see quite a narrow range of innovation in respect of where people are focused. And of course, people are focused on the pain first, which is correct, but we're not necessarily looking at the more transformative end of innovation. Looking at things from a blank sheet of paper against customer need, and there's an opportunity there. And the models and the markets that we're seeing, business models, we still see a lot of time as the measure of value, and there are nascent and unserved or underserved markets, including the SME community and B2C, as I mentioned. And this is an interesting tell sign. These statistics are an interesting tell sign of where the sector is overall. And I've seen statistics like this for various jurisdictions. These numbers were taken from the Junior Lawyers Division of the Law Society in England and Wales last year. 50% of our digital natives are not knowing what law tech is, and 60% are not seeing how it impacts them. And these are people who've gone through training and they're through into their law firms, into their businesses. And it demonstrates the lack of exposure that they're having all the way up to that point. And I think that's very interesting too. And when we look at the purpose of legal services and the purpose of law and the sector overall, being behind the change curve is important and I would say urgent. And we can start to see law tech as an investment in the rule of law itself, in the infrastructure of society done right. So what does business and society actually need from us? And there are some examples and categories here. I mentioned access. At what point will we have legal services on mobile in the way that we do with banking and increasingly health services? And what about risk? What are we as a legal sector going to do to support businesses and individuals with the increasing complexity of regulation over time? What are we going to do about that? And at what point will the regulation and the availability of technology mean that our insurance community will start to see that deployment of tech is actually part of taking reasonable care and part of the standard expected? Disputes, what does a relationship-led world look like in respect of dispute management? What is the future of dispute resolution in a society like that we can bring about? Contracts, the Lego bricks, the currency of trade and consumer interaction. How are we going to take that forward? And data, there's a huge opportunity in respect of data, as others may have mentioned at this conference. What could we do in terms of magnifying the impact of the sector for the benefit of society and the economies, if we're able to move through some of the challenges in respect of data access, data sharing, data insights sharing? And the law, I'm always interested in the thought experiment of if we gathered people around tables of consideration who were experts in particular areas, together with the people who are on the receiving end of the laws and regulations, what would we reinvent and what would we put in the bin? And this is really a growth opportunity. They say that when the wind blows, some people build walls, other people build windmills. And what we're looking for here is a windmill opportunity. It certainly is one. So 60% of businesses that go through a digital transformation actually tap into entirely new business models. And that's not improving existing ones. That's things they hadn't even considered before they went through that transformation. Up to 50% increase in customer satisfaction. And I can believe that as somebody who's been on the client side, on the receiving end of process improvement and technological deployment, I can very much believe a 50% increase in satisfaction in respect of that sort of improvement. And pre-COVID, a third of organizations surveyed were seeing that digital transformation was a matter of survival, and I wonder how many would say the same now. And then there's a whole heap of productivity improvements that are well known and that people are going after. And this is certainly beyond remote working. This is about root and branch review, and it's also beyond technology. We're not just talking about tech when we say Lawtech. Technology can be the vehicle through which we can achieve and consider these developments and advances. So to share a little bit about Lawtech UK and what we're doing towards this, these objectives. So the UK government recognised the need to support the sector in respect of this, this evolution, and Lawtech UK was born. We have a panel of fantastic cross-industry, cross-sector, including public and academia. We have a group of people who are an advisory board, and they're also very active in the projects, which I'll share a little bit about. And then TechNation, which is the growth platform in the UK for tech companies and their founders and founding teams. Lawtech UK sits within TechNation with a small team of us deployed. And the Ministry of Justice is our investor. So we have seed funding for 2 years towards these aims. And we have a vision and work programme represented here. So a core purpose around ultimately supporting society and the economy and delivering global leading services and systems through the fourth industrial revolution. With a commercial focus, Lawtech UK is not at the time being focused on citizen access to justice, which is covered by a different government programme. We have some core objectives that we are tracking towards. So supporting the awareness and understanding of the benefits of technology properly deployed, fostering the more transformative end of innovation that I mentioned, and supporting the cohesion of the sector so that we can come together around these objectives. Some results we would like to help achieve. Of course, we will not achieve these alone, nor in 2 years, but to build foundations that can be scaled. And we have a 4-pillar work programme. And I want to tell you about one of the projects in particular, which is particularly pertinent to what we're talking about today. And that is the Lorex Sandbox. So the Lorex Sandbox was actually inspired by the fintech sector and the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK regulator, and the work that they have done over the last 5+ years to support the innovation community and the pioneers in fintech. Now that's a regulatory sandbox where there's oversight methodology relating to regulatory waivers, etc. This is an innovation environment. It's a research and development initiative to help the pioneers fast track through their development and get to proof of value faster. We're calling it Avengers Assemble for those of you who may be familiar with the film. So what support and hero power can we wrap around these pioneers to support the evolution of the sector? Now, through a phase of research and discussion with the sector, we identified 3 areas which were not otherwise supported in the market to the degree that the pioneers were needing. One is working with regulators. So the UK regime is a deregulated regime. So this is, as I said, this is not about regulatory oversight per se, but it is about regulatory support. So we have a fast response forum of 11 regulators, all the many legal services regulators, and the Information Commissioner looks after privacy, and the Financial Conduct Authority and anyone else who might be relevant in terms of intersectionality of products and services are welcome. And they are a bench to support the pioneers as we go through, and there'll be certain deliverables that they will bring forward also. Connections through network. So getting to the right decision maker at the right time is fundamental for speed and to surmount some of the pervasive challenges that we see in the sector. So that's another track of service. And then the other one is access to data. So how can we support the people who need data to provide better benefits to customers, to train their algorithms, to take us forward the 10x that we need to go. And so we have a stream of work which is around data access. Given that we have a lot of pioneers working in the AI space, we are also working on applied ethics in respect of some of these projects. So this is just a pilot in this stage. We are running with the product development strategy of minimum viable product to test this. So we're nearly ready to go. We'll be selecting 5 participants to run in the pilot, and then we will learn what we learn during this phase and iterate for the future. So we had 65 people apply, 65 organizations apply, and we had only a 10-day window for applications, and we did basically no marketing, just a few posts on LinkedIn and Twitter. Now, to me, that demonstrates something in respect of demand and the need that there is there in the sector. So we will test that during the pilot. And a whole range, a really rich array, which I think represents the rich array of offerings in the sector actually. And some examples of really compelling products. So simplifying access to legal information and technical legal documents for consumers. I mean, we all know what that's like, reading the Bible of T's and C's when we're clicking on things online, and helping assess cognitive risk assessments in respect of that. Making contracts and regulations smart so that we can actually harness the data, increase efficiency, maximize automation. There's some real opportunities there. The disintermediation of legal services and the do-it-yourself model. So can we provide empowerment to people through these products so that they're better aware and able to handle a lot of their work alone before they then need to take the specialist advice. And risk avoidance, as we mentioned before, that's very interesting. How can we, and at what point will the legal sector be able to support, for example, the ESG movement and the increase in focus around that, avoiding calamity for society, and making it easy for businesses to not just deal with risk when it crystallizes, but avoid it in the first place, and a whole range of other activity. You can see the focus here around B2B, and the data shows that there was an earlier stage, which is probably reflective of the market, earlier stage investment levels in the people who were applying. And we will, as I say, run for 3 months. So March, April, we will have a showcase and hopefully share insights, case studies back out to the market so we can all learn. So our year 1 program, we have other projects running, a lot of work happening, really exciting collaboration. And this is really all about the foundation for year 2 and beyond, and the foundation for our collective activity. And there's a question here for us all, which is, what is the opportunity for greater collective endeavour through technology? And this is these are some visual that we shared at Legal Geek this year, where we represented 2 different scenarios and future states. One was in relation to platform domination, with competing standards, not very much collaboration, and certain larger players in the market with very fewer new entrants. And this one, which demonstrated a common pooling of certain insights and information, interoperability and collaboration. And this reminds me of the years that I have had the privilege of working with the software engineering community, including them wishing that patents did not exist because they are evil, and deploying naturally to open source what they learn, and not just sharing what they've learned, but sharing the problem set so that others don't make the same mistakes. At TransferWise, we were the first non-bank to get access to the Bank of England direct settlement system, the faster payment system. And it was a historic and a big moment. And the team identified that as part of the integration to this system, there was an integration layer which was provided by an incumbent, just one. And it was very expensive, and it didn't have the availability and the functionality that they felt it should have. So they did open heart surgery, produced their own interface layer. And as soon as they'd finished it, they open sourced it, gifted it out to the market. You can look it up. It's called Stargate if it's of interest. And for me, that's a demonstration of an ethos, a culture that exists in a sector that we could have in the legal sector. We, notwithstanding client privilege and client confidentiality and data protection issues, all of which we need to address, and all of which we are addressing through our data work stream in the sandbox, and that we hope to test with many people, including our network. Assuming that we can surmount those things, and we will test that, where does the culture come from to default to open? And how could we do that? Obviously, the software community has built that trust up over a very long period of time, and somebody had to go first. So I think this is quite interesting for us as a community. What is the opportunity for us here, and can we build windmills together, perhaps? I think they were the main things I wanted to share. I'm interested very much in your plans and your thinking, and perhaps some of that will come through in the questions, Natasha. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. We're still waiting for a few questions just to pop up.
It's Jenifer, Natasha.
I'm sorry?
It's Jenifer.
Oh, Jenifer, I'm so sorry. Yes, we're just waiting for a few questions just to pop up. Just bear with me 1 second. So I guess that will be all for today. If we do get any more questions during our session, we will post them online. I will send them over to you, Jenifer. Thank you so much.
Actually, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I do have a question. I'm just typing.
Hi, Ludwig. Hi.
Hi. How are you? Great presentation.
Very well, and you?
Great, very well, thank you. Do you mind if I just read out the question, or would you like me to?
Please, no, please, just shoot, yeah.
Great, amazing. So I thought it was very interesting how you were talking about, access to data as kind of a point that you're focused on as part of this. And I'm just really curious as to your experience and whether you think, sort of the disaggregation of databases within, various regulators, various departments of government, whether this is one of the main challenges in getting access to data, or sort of what your experience has been around, trying to deal with that problem, I guess, or whether you even agree that that is one of the problems, that the data is just in different places and kind of hard to, collate and publish.
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. I do think that's one of the challenges. And we've still got, for example, in the property sector, we still have data which is in physical paper copy in offices. And at some point there needs to be an activity of getting that digitized. Happily, the technology is increasing to the point that actually structuring the data once we have access to it in a digital form may become less needed. And that's great. Because obviously that structuring piece has been a barrier in the past. But no, certainly disparate sources. Now, of course, what's relevant here is what is the use case? And this is one of the things that's quite interesting in respect of our work, and others are working on this also, is the data source needed is very specific to the use case for which it is needed. And so matching that up. This is all during a transition period, right? Before we're a fully digital environment where everything talks to one another, and countries like Estonia are leading the way on that. So they aren't having that connection problem. But yes, certainly, and this is something that government is working on. They have a strategy here in the UK and a governance committee that's establishing to support that. But we hope to essentially clear the path for the pioneers that need this help with the data matching. But yes, Ludwig, and was that your experience also?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, first of all, thanks for the answer. Yeah, I think so, right? One of the issues seems to be that a lot of the data, as you say, is just not accessible at all. It's just in the sense that it's just not digital. Another issue seems to be of the data that is digital, it's not always clear cut as to whether it can be republished and reused, and what sort of license agreements apply. So I think that those are sort of the two main issues that I see. Right, one is like the digitalization of the stuff that's not digitized, and then it's sort of the collection, and then, as you also say, structuring and publication of the stuff that is already there and that's digitized.
That's right,
but that's important work. So,
and there is a lot that is available, and we should start. Certainly, we should start with what we have, and then we should stack rank the priorities, and then we should figure out what the framework is to make it easy. And we're trying to touch each of those. Thank you for the question. I can see a few others here, Natasha.
Yes. So a question for you, Jenifer, obviously, is why do you think the legal sector has been behind the adoption of tech?
There is a great piece of work by the Law Society, and there are others that have looked at this. And essentially, there are a number of factors, including culture. So, as I mentioned at the end there, that we have traditionally had a very busy, very focused focus on just delivering what we need to deliver very fast, and we haven't necessarily had business people and multidisciplinary teams and others that can show us the way. And I know certainly for me, when I started my career as a GC, I had to learn about the technology. I didn't know about it. I hadn't learned it in my previous work, and I think that education has not been through the system either. So I think there's definitely an education and an awareness piece here, but also a preparedness to have a go. I know having a go sounds to some irresponsible, but actually that is what we need to do. And the other piece is my experience has been primarily in corporates with a consumer facing aspect. And if we obsess about consumers in the way that consumer facing, about clients in the way that consumer facing companies do, constantly user testing, constantly asking them how it is, what's going well, really harvesting the dissonance. So where customers are not happy, really using that to improve the service. I think some of those things we have been a little bit behind on, but the Law Society adoption report is interesting if you want to read more.
Great, thank you. We have a few more questions for you. Do you think that the regulatory system of the legal sector in the UK needs to be updated because of the rise in technology?
I think that's a great question, and I had some interesting conversations with Stephen Mason, who has put out a fantastic report on this subject and covers Lawtech. My view is that we need, as a sector, to balance two things. One is innovation, and the other is responsibility. So those two things are very important, and in the combination of both is how the diamond will be made. So of course, regulation is important, high standards are important, but at the moment we have a regulatory regime which is very flexible, and that flexibility does need to be maintained. I support Stephen Mason's suggestions around having a register of tech providers, so that a consumer or an operator could go and have a check who they are and have some kind of ombudsman or base level regulatory support in relation to that. But I think we should be very sensitive about the risk and make sure that the regulatory environment is proportionate to the risk. Obviously, the piece around ethics is very important too, and I do wonder the degree to which the front part is more important than the back end of where something's gone wrong. Obviously, you need to have the standards set from on high, but our ethics and our culture are also very important. And in my experience of the Lawtech community, they do think about these things as part of design, and increasingly they will continue to do so.
Thank you so much. I am very wary of the time, so just one more question and then we'll answer the rest of them online. So will the sandbox complement the existing UK Lawtech landscape?
The hope is yes. I'm just reading the rest of it. Will it interact with the various legal tech labs such as Fuse? Yes, George, thank you for that. Absolutely. And we are working across the ecosystem. We have a range of people represented on the steering board. The intention is for the sandbox to absolutely, we are not an accelerator or an incubator competing with those brilliant aspects of the market. And we hope that what happens is that there is a cycling through into the sandbox, that we all learn. And the whole point of this is collaboration. You know, the network that we're wrapping around these people are made up of many of those. I think the other thing to mention is the hub environment, where we want to support the sector to be able to get their arms around all the things that are happening, all the different funding sources, activities, incubators, etc. So we're looking forward to putting that out next year.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, everyone. Looking forward to reading the rest of your